It's another beautiful day, and this is the desk. A special welcome to the desk. On the desk this evening, we'll look at something very, very important. As a matter of fact, on Tuesday, it is obvious every one of us is aware of the Central Bank of Nigeria's announcement of the 50 basis point decrease in the monetary policy rate. We'll be looking at all of that on the program today. But then some persons are asking questions. Some persons have questions that they are yet to ask. Are we on the right trajectory? As a matter of fact, there have been a reduction in the MPR, and of course, the CBN aimed to lower borrowing cost for banks. You know how these things happen and how these issues are being tackled. We'll go on a quick break. After this break, we'll return for the program. My name is Ramsey Enoch Agbo, and I have a guest joining me on the program this evening, an expert, as we talk about the issues around this, some of these policies, some of these decisions. How does it affect the day-to-day activity of the financial institution and the economy? How is it affected, positive or negative? What about the Nigerians who are at the middle of this whole thing? After this break, we'll return and the desk continues. Welcome back from that break. Right with me in the studio here is, of course, a man who is a political economist and a development expert in the person of Adefolarin Olamilekan. It's good to have you join us on the program this evening.
Thanks for having me, Ramsey.
Well, you're not new to this information, to these details, but let's get started. What do you make of the CBN's MPC and, of course, the MPR rate cut to a very sizable percentage? Some persons say it's good to have you join us back. We apologize for the little break in transmission. Now let's get to the discussion proper. As a matter of fact, My guest is ready seated, and he's ready to respond to all the questions that I have today. But then one thing that a lot of Nigerians are trying to wrap their heads around is the 27% borrowing rate. Let's get to talk about it. What, on your own part, what do you make of the CBN's, of course, MPC and MPR rate cut to 27%?
A very interesting perspective, you say, coming from what you're asking. For the benefit of those who are watching us, maybe are hearing MPR, MPC meeting, or MPR rate for the first time. It goes back to monetary policy, economy of Nigeria. So we need to educate people, particularly people who are just hearing it for the first time, that these are mechanism where government use to control lending rate among banks, either from CBN to banks or from banks to people in business and the rest of them. So it's a global phenomenon that monetary policy comes like what we just saw in Nigeria, or what we witnessed in Nigeria yesterday from Nigerian Central Bank. Last week, we have the Bank of England also doing the same thing in the economy by cutting down the rate from 4.5 to 4%. We also have the bank, Federal Reserve Bank of US also doing the same thing, from cutting their own rate from 2.5 to 2.3 or thereabout. Then just recently, we also saw some African countries also doing the same thing. Ghana also cut their rate. We also have Algeria also doing the same thing. I think by the end of tomorrow, South Africa will also be cutting down the rate on their monetary policy. So the monetary rate policy rate is like the rate that control the lending facilities, what charges in terms of interest you put on a particular credit facility that you receive from the banks, or banks receive from the central bank of their nation. So that's what MPC, MPR really entails. But we have in Nigeria what we call the Monetary Policy Committee. There are about 12-member committee with the central bank governor, representatives of the Federal Ministry of Finance, as well as other key member of Nigerian economy, being member of that particular group, also dealing with that particular engagement. And yesterday they had their meeting, a 2 days meeting, Monday and Tuesday. So they ended up yesterday around 2:30, and they make an announcement. And coming back to the rate that you are talking about, I think since 2020, we had a cut rate in rate last in 2020 September. So after 5 years, this is the first time we'll be having the rate being cut again. You understand? So after 5 years, we're having another rate cut. And when Dr. Yemi Cardoso took over the central bank affair, he increased rate and he maintained it for 5 consecutive times. After increasing in late 2023, he maintained it all through yesterday, and around 2:10 yesterday afternoon, they announced the cutting of the rate. So it is a mechanism that shows how the country manage its monetary policy in relation to other economic indicators like inflation and other aspects of the financial sector in the Nigerian country. So it's a long-awaited announcement, like economists like Pamombo Sef and others across Nigeria have been waiting that we want a rate cut. Because the rate that was existing, 27.5%, if you go to banks, they add about 250 basis points. 250 basis point means that they add like 10 to another additional 10, between 5 to 10% to what the CBN is giving, and they make it as the rate that you pay when you borrow money from the bank. So with what has happened yesterday now, the highest any bank will begin to ask in terms of interest rate will be between 29 to 32%. Unlike what we saw before yesterday, between 30 to 35% or thereabout in terms of interest rate.
So this, in a way, is going to be to the benefit of the average Nigerian.
Definitely it will be, because you have to translate. Interest rate translates into business expansion. Then that business expansion translates into a well-organized production sector in the economy, which will not benefit the people. Although many are saying that it should be lower than that. But we'll get to that.
Everyone wants it lower than that. But then, how important is this? Because in your introduction, you mentioned some countries that are also cutting down, all right, their rates. So why are they doing that?
Interestingly, interest rate work in 2 ways. One, it works for credit facilities at banks. Second, it also works on fixed incomes. Fixed incomes are technically, but I'll just hope that we have the time to explain it. Fixed income are government treasury papers. When you buy government papers, they pay you interest. So that interest rate covered it. They also have stocks in the Nigerian stock market, which you also pay. Then we have bonds. You have heard of Nigerian debt management that normally sell bonds to people, whether dollar bonds or pounds bonds or naira bonds. So those interest rates also work with that in the fixed income area, whereby as the interest rate is at 27%, most of those bonds or treasury paper you buy either from central bank or from debt management office of Nigeria, it gives you a higher interest. Like in the case of Nigeria, we have always had 9%, 10% interest rate on government paper that you buy. They call it coupon in other countries, but in Nigeria, we call it treasury bills or bonds paper. So those paper have, if you buy one paper, let's say at 10 naira, so you have an interest of 10 naira or 8 naira. So the government will pay that by the time they are paying your money. So interest rates work in that regard. So that's why some people prefer interest rate to be high, because it favors fixed income. But on the other hand, credit facilities suffer, accessibility when interest rate is high. And that's why many Nigerians say, reduce the interest so that banks can be able to give out money to people. But on the other way, when banks do have, because banks also enjoy this high interest rate, we know why, because the CBN borrow them money. So when CBN borrow them money, at the same time, they also borrow CBN money. They borrow CBN money by buying treasury papers from government, so they get more money from there. CBN also borrow them money. So it's a two-way thing that interest will work favorably for businesses in one way, particularly in fixed income aspect. But when it comes to credit facilities, it's a different ball game.
It's a different ball game when it comes to credit facility. Now, let's go down a little bit to some other things that we need to talk about right now. We're talking about this reduction now. In your mind, do you think banks will be happy about this?
They will, because they are seeing the range of, I think what the CBN did was a 50 basic point reduction. They really removed the 5%, 27.50. So they really take away the 550 that is there, so they leave it at 27. So it's still a good one for the banks, and also a good one for the economy, because what we need to also understand is that it's not coming as a way of because other countries are cutting down. No, CBN take a cautionary movement in a sense that we have had a disciplinary monetary policy since the beginning of this year. We have seen the growth in the economy. Even the CBN confessed that the reason why they are doing this is to balance and push for economic growth. And when you talk about balancing the economic growth, you want a situation whereby it will not go out of hand. Because if they have reduced it further than that, maybe like 20% or thereabout, some of us will still come out and say, no, there are still indicators in the economy. The inflation is still double digit. Other indicators, food inflation particularly, is still very high. So what they have taken is a cautionary movement, in a sense that they are checking out what could happen after taking this particular indecision, and what will happen in the next 3 months after taking it. So those are the things they are taking. But for many of us who also agree that at this point in time we need to cut, I think we give a kudos to them for doing that. But on the other hand, it's a cautionary move by the CBN, which they themselves believe that what they have done is to stabilize the economy from the level it was about 7 months ago to a more higher ground, in a sense that they want to balance everything in their kitty.
But if you ask CBN as it is right now, I think for the CBN, the rate cut is to balance and, of course, push growth in the economy cautiously.
Exactly.
So now, what's your take on that? Are you on the same page?
For now, I would say I'm on the same page, because we have seen the rate development coming from the 5 consecutive maintenance or 27.50. For 5 times of the MPC meeting that they have had since last year, October, they have stick to the 27.5%. And with that, there have been a lot of growth within the economy. First and foremost, one of the things that we can see is the discipline in our reserve, external reserve, bankable budget, in a sense that we have over $43 billion in our external reserve now. This is kudos to what the CBN did in terms of our monetary policy. Then secondly, we're also seeing a naira exchange to other foreign currency being stabilized in a way that naira is not gaining appreciation. At the end of today's foreign exchange market, we saw naira being exchanged at 1,487 naira. Unlike what we saw earlier this year at 1,600 naira. All this is due to the disciplinary monetary policy that the CBN have taken. Then on the other hand, we also saw inflation, even though it was a rebased inflation by NBS. So we are also seeing that something positive is coming from there. So these are some of the reasons that CBN just have to do what? Take the decision to be cautionary and to take the decision to cut the rate. Although we have the volatile aspect of the economy, which is the food inflation, which is still biting. And even the CBN admit yesterday that the food inflation is still very high. But they also acknowledge that some of the things that normally make food inflation to be so high are now receiving positive mechanism. For instance, the pressure on the PMS price, we are now seeing a balanced PMS price across the country because we now have a refiner like Dangote now producing. Instead of us relying on 100% importation of PMS, we now have at least about 45% being refined locally. So that alone have given us the opportunity to have a good way or a goodwill going into our food inflation that we believe that at 21.88% that it is today, as against the core inflation, our headline inflation at 20.13%, food inflation will also go down. But we still have the issue with transportation costs and insecurity that they put at that point. But the transportation cost at this point in time is not because the fuel price is high. It's not because diesel is high. It is just because of the deficit infrastructure that we have. A lot of transporters will complain that the roads are not motorable as we want. I think that's the major aspect of our issue in our transportation. But if you talk about fuel, diesel, nobody tells you that because of fuel, the transportation is high, but they will tell you because of the bad road that we have in the system.
Oh, all right. Because of the bad road that we have in the system. Now, you've said it all, but then let me ask one question as regards that before we go. In all of this, where is the place of the average Nigerian? I'm always very concerned. I don't know. Exactly. You may be saying, Rapsy is always talking about the average Nigerians. I'm so concerned about the average Nigerians. All right. From this very particular explanation now, so far, where is the place of the average Nigerian as it has to do with benefit? Let me just put it open.
Interesting. The one thing about the kind of economy that we practice is that it takes a long time before the translation, the transmission, and the accrued benefits trickle down. I've been on this show where I talk about the kind of class that we have in our society. So the economy is like a pyramid. When it flowed down. But before it flowed down, it could have a challenge within the middle range of the pyramid. And that's what we normally have in Nigerian economy. Like the policy of the government today, talking about economic empowerment and the rest of it. Not that the government cannot come down, but it has a challenge within the middle range that it's supposed to follow through and get down. The same thing with the monetary policy. Although the monetary policy is tied to the central bank to make, but the monetary policy will not work to translate to 3 square meal for Nigerians a day or give them enough money in their pocket until the fiscal policy work alongside the monetary policy. And there has been a disconnection over the years between monetary policy and fiscal policy. What are the fiscal policies we are talking about? The bad road that we are talking about today is in a realm of fiscal policy. And what is that fiscal policy? Talk about tax policy of the government. Talk about money budget for infrastructure. Talk about money budget for human capital. This is what is missing in our economy. So whatever policy that CBN is taking in terms of the monetary nurture and the rest of them, when the fiscal policy is not collaborating or is not being injected, interlinked together, there will always be a disconnection. And that is why we are having an issue. But of late, we are seeing a connection between the monetary policy and the fiscal policy. That's why I could quickly make mention of Dangote refinery coming upstream and refining product locally, thereby reducing the price of PMS one way or the other. Unlike what we saw before, where PMS price was going as high as 1,000 for 1,005. But because of local refinery, we are now seeing an injection that is now reducing the price. But going further into other aspects of the fiscal policy in connection to the monetary policy is to tackle the transportation area, particularly infrastructure. What about insecurity? What about food storage that are majorly linked to the people? Because you ask a question, how does the people benefit from all this kind of policy? They can only benefit when government policy are interlinked, interwoven, and transmitted to the barest minimum that people can really feel the impact of government policy. But here in Nigeria, it is always the disconnection. And what is that disconnection? When the policy is flowing with all the oil and honey that it has, when it gets to the middle, it gets stuck. And it doesn't get to the bottom. And it is the bottom that the majority of Nigerians are. And you ask me, how is the policy stuck at the middle? We have the issues of corruption, misplacement of government policy, misappropriation of government fund that is meant to cater for development projects. Some of them are got stolen. Some of them are got looted. So those are the aspects that are supposed to work and ensure that monetary policy of the government work for the people. But for the CBN, they have been doing their best. They have been able to help us to reduce the gap difference between official price, exchange price of naira to dollar, and black market. If you go to the black market these days, you want to go and sell your dollar, they will buy it cheaply. They will even buy it at the official price of central bank because they have been able to reduce that gap to less than 14 naira. But before, a lot of people just go and get some few dollars, keep it in their back pocket and wait for speculation. And when it becomes speculated, they bring it out and sell it. But now, that business is not profiting because CBN are able to tackle their own side. But the physical side where the government is supposed to tackle, that is where we have major challenge. Someone was asking the question this morning and said, the state government have been receiving a lot of trillions or billions of naira in the last 2 years of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Where is the money for road? Where is the money for education? Where is the money for health? That is where the disconnection is. That's why you cannot see the benefit of the current monetary policy of the CBN working in tangible with physical policy of the government to really benefit ordinary Nigerians going forward.
But the question now is there hope? Is there hope? Is that because you know the kind of country that we are in? You just said it because I was going to ask that question until you got to talk about it. A lot have actually come in, all right, but then Nigerians are yet to see. But you say maybe you are treading the path of the president that said, well, there will be light at the end of the tunnel. So we should keep our fingers crossed and see what happened. But then let's look at something very critical as the case may be. Raised the cash reserve requirement for commercial banks to 45%.
Exactly.
As a matter of fact, and of course, while retaining merchant bank, the merchant bank at 16%. And then the introduction of 75% CRR, of course, on non-TSA, all right, that is for public sector deposits. I think we need to have an understanding of that raise that came, those mechanisms, exactly. Because some Nigerians, you know, it gets to a point that some Nigerians look at these things and they say, I beg, all these things are grammar. We don't. But
actually, they are too technical for ordinary people to understand. But we can simplify.
That's what we want.
Now, when we talk about 45% cash reserve ratio, every bank could have 100 naira in a day. All the money that they will take to a particular bank, let's say it's 100 naira a day or 1,000 in a day. Now, that 1,000 in a day, the bank can only have 450 and keep for themselves. The remaining 550, give it out
to the public, people who want to borrow.
Yes, that's what that 45% means. In the simplified language, you have 1,000 naira. Out of it, your 45% is your 450 naira. So keep that 450 naira as your cash reserve ratio. The rest 550, give it out. But arguments have abound that it should be less than 45. That means banks should have less than 450 naira in their vault. At least 200 naira or 150, so that they can give out a lot. But the CBN will must be very cautious also in that regard, because if you allow banks to just be giving money anyhow, there was a time we have what we call bad loans in this country. Yeah. That bad loan led to a lot of banks being bankrupt and having issue that non-functional loans. So CBN will have to do that. That's what that 45% cash reserve ratio means. Now the 16% for merchant bank. You know, merchant bank are meant to be giving out money for industrial purposes. So that their own is understandable, because they now have to give money to bankable project, and that's why they give them 16%. Now the 75% that was put on the public sector or non-TSA is this: most banks in Nigeria depend on government money. So that government money they normally collect through remittance and the rest of it, they keep it, and they also give it out in a way. But CBN is saying now, for now, don't concentrate on government money alone to be collecting. Also focus on non-TSA, non-government money, and collect that money. I don't know whether you get it.
So who would they be collecting it from?
Nigerians. That's why you know the bank reserve ratio work with liquidity ratio. There's LR. That LR is 30%. Liquidity ratio is to ensure that the money in circulation will not be more than 30%. That one work with CBN mechanism alongside the bank cash reserve ratio, because the bank cash reserve ratio cannot work alone. It has to work with other mechanisms like the interest rate that we talk about at 27%, with the cash reserve ratio at 45%, and the liquidity ratio at 30%. So all these three mechanisms or parameters work together. They are interlinked, interwoven one cannot work without the other one. The 26% interest rate cut cannot work with 45%, cannot work without 45% cash reserve ratio. And the cash reserve ratio cannot work without liquidity. So it's something to control the economy. And for that instance, the 30% liquidity ratio work this way. You know, when everybody is having money, in simple basic economies, we said, because people have money now, to be chasing how many things? We'll be chasing everything. So because of that, the 70% that CBN is now asking to be out and 30% to be flowing is very, very reasonable in terms of economy management to ensure that we are disciplined and to also ensure that we have a stable price mechanism for our goods and services. If not, there will be price war in Nigeria.
All right. I think at this time we need to talk about Nigeria's GDP.
Exactly.
As a matter of fact, because all these things that we're saying, at the end of the day, we should also be bothered about the GDP too.
Exactly.
What's the rate? How is it? Is it stable? Is it increasing? Well, how is the GDP? Now, this is it. We just need, as a development economy, someone who is a development expert and of course political economist who is conversant with all of this. Let's have your take on Nigeria's GDP for the second quarter growth, all right, of 4.23%, all right, that is against the 3.48%. If you can remember
exactly.
very well, that was the growth that was recorded in 2024. That was last year, and the 3.13% growth that was recorded, that is now referring to the first quarter of 2025.
Exactly.
What's your take with putting together this disparity?
I think one of the things we can take away from the growth ratio talking about the GDP is that we have been able to move from 3.13 in first quarter to 4.23 in second quarter, and against what we had last year of less than 3.7% at the end of the entire fourth quarter year 2024. What this shows is that our production is increasing. What also shows that we are creating jobs in some area of the economy, and what it also shows is that there's a bit of stability and growth within some sector of the economy. I'll give it for you for free. The second quarter growth of 4.23, the biggest contributor to that growth is the oil and gas sector, which contributed 20.68%. Now, in the first quarter of 2025, the oil sector did not contribute up to 15% to the Nigerian economy. Guess what? The ICT, the creative economy, the non-productive, the non-oil sector contributed so much. But guess what will happen? Because we have increased our oil production quota in the last part of the first quarter and into the second quarter, and this third quarter we are in, the oil production have increased. We have even surpassed OPEC quota that they give us. So because of that, we have made so much oil revenue from oil exploration and sales. So that contributed over 20% to the GDP. And that's why the second quarter was recording this massive 4.23. And again, the ICT sector is still doing very well. The agri sector is also doing fantastically well. And also the only sector that I could say that is still a little bit shaky is the manufacturing sector, although they are contributing, but not as expected.
Maybe because there is no enabling environment. The manufacturing sector, I don't think they are doing much. That's the reason a lot of Nigerians are clamoring. Give us a conducive environment. After some of the policies, there were some manufacturing companies that left. Before now, you used to hear of textile companies, especially in the north, in some parts of the north, in Lagos. But these things are not there now. So as it is right now, where are we?
I think where we are progressing gradually. But it's not a progress that everybody just wants it once. But it's a gradual process.
Economists will always tell you it's a gradual process. Economists will always tell you it's a gradual process.
I think that's
and Nigerians patient enough for that time to come, looking at the hardship.
The issue is that they have to be patient. Even in developed economies, there are still issues within the economy, but the people have to be patient. But the only thing that we're having that is a little bit discouraging is the political economic governance policy of the government, why it is not trickling down. All these technicalities I've mentioned, broke it down in a simplified way. For other Nigerians who are expecting a 3 square meal, are expecting a plate of rice, a plate of beans on their table.
Basic.
They may not be ready to listen to this, but from what we are doing right now, I think some of them will want to pay attention to what we are saying and be able to learn. So the issue is that government policy work like a pyramid flowing down. But as I earlier pointed out, it gets stuck in the middle. In the Nigerian case, most of the government policy is meant to change our life for the better. But it gets stuck in the middle.
What's stuck in it? What is stuck in it?
I just made mention of one of the things is corruption within the sector. It's corruption. I just read in headline today, Nigerian government is about to push out 200 billion empowerment program from Nigeria. They have made mention of it in document. But guess what? By the time that money want to be used for those projects now, it's a challenge. So where do we go from there? So what I'm trying to say is that in as much as we understand some of this technicality around the economy, as it is working in developed climes, the only thing that is helping development clients for the economic policy to work is that it doesn't get stuck in the middle because there's not much corruption. Not that there is no corruption in US, in UK, and the rest of the there is, but it is not as monstrous as we have it in Nigeria, and that is the big challenge.
All right, but then, so what do you have to say for our GDP now? So because from what you said, we're expecting if in this next quarter, in the third quarter now, we're expecting something better than what we had in 2024 and the first quarter of 2025.
Exactly. Definitely it will happen because right now the oil production is increasing. There's less oil theft in Nigeria, not like what we had before. Then there's less vandalism and there's less, the only challenge within that oil sector, that is oil and gas sector, is that we have not been able to tap into innovative oil infrastructure facilities. Even though the president signed over 2 major presidential oil and gas order to ensure that they open that stream with the PIA in place, and that has been working for the government. But there are still little challenges there that they need to tackle. They're talking about the manufacturing sector. Power deficit is a big problem. Electricity in Nigeria is quite a big, but we understood that with the new Electricity Act that is in place right now, definitely that could open up channels whereby state can begin to generate, transmit and distribute electricity within their environment and begin to create, hub of industries through electricity distribution and investment. And someone said something recently that electricity is not supposed to be free because it is cost intensive. But how many Nigerians want to listen that electricity should be free? It is just so recently federal government begin to educate Nigerians that electricity should not be free. You have to pay for it. Even if you go abroad, as where ferries our US government could be or UK government will be, they are still paying for electricity. So those basic amenities.
But I think the problem Nigerians are even having is paying and not having.
It boils down to the issue of corruption. When you pay, like the challenge you have.
So why should you be paying if corruption is there? Maybe that's the reason Nigerians are complaining.
The reason, when we talk about the corruption in the electricity sector, we are not talking about just collecting people money and things. We are talking about the people managing that sector. How intensive, how intentional are they to make sure that the services they are providing is real? We have had issue with ADC. We have had issue with transmission company. The GenCos are the only one that are looking a little bit. I'm not saying they are completely sane too, but they are a little bit sane because they are the one complaining that everybody is owing them, but they are not owing anybody. GenCos is the only one that complain that everybody is owing them, including federal government.
Federal government, including
exactly. They only look like the saint among the three mechanism that is in that sector, but the rest are like they don't know what they are doing. Particularly the discos. Although we understand the disco, it was done in a hurry. That's what some analysts have put together and said the privatization exercise in the Nigerian electricity sector was done in a hurry. But we have a document that is controlling it now to control all those abnormalities. And that's why the president signed the Electricity Act Bill 2023 to amend some of those challenges that we have faced in that sector. And if we can tackle that, then tackle infrastructure, then tackle logistic challenge and insecurity, Nigeria will be a place where anybody want to stay and nobody want to jackpot.
Talking about jackpot. All right, we are still returning back. Let's take a quick break. After this break, we'll return. And I see need for us to look at the foreign reserve too, because in all of these discussions, we need to actually look at our foreign reserve. So after this break, we will bring you more details on the topic of discussion. Stay with us. Yes, of course. Olamileko Adefolarin Olamileko, a development expert and a political economist, is my guest on the desk today. And I said on return, we'll look at the foreign reserve, which is very important. Now, as a matter of fact, let's consider something briefly from the foreign reserve, which rose to about, I think, $43.05 billion. That is as at September 11. Then moving away from there now, that was in 2025, this year, up from 40.51 billion at the end of July, providing an import cover of 8.28 months. All right, 0.28 months. The current account balance has recorded a surplus of $5.2 billion, and that was in Q2. Okay, up from $2.85 billion that we had in Q1.
Interesting. You know what was really happened was that at the time that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu took over office in 2023, and when Yemi Cardoso was appointed in late October, our foreign reserve was less than $30 billion. And one of the mandates that the president gave to Yemi Cardoso, the CBN governor, was that they should be able to get up to $100 billion before 2027 billion US as foreign reserve. And CBN on their own also set a target that before the end of 2025, they should be able to meet up with about $60 billion in our foreign reserve. But we need to also educate ourselves on this foreign reserve. Foreign reserve cover your trade balance, your external trade balance, majorly your importation. But there are 5 string fingers where we normally get that money. One is our oil receipt. Second is remittance from our brothers and sisters who are abroad who send money home. The third one is loans, maybe that we get. And the fourth one is about our export. And the last one comes from foreign portfolio investors who come into Nigeria. But out of these 5 strings, the oil have been very, very good. You could recall that it was during President Bola Ahmed Tinubu era and the current CBN governor era that NNPC is now paying all accrued oil receipt dollar to CBN. That alone buffered and increased the foreign reserve. Then secondly, foreign portfolio investors are now coming to Nigeria to put more money in our stock market, in our fixed income. You could also recall it was under this president that we now have what we call the dollar bond that Nigeria requested for about 500 million US dollar bonds. But all of it, so we got over close to $1 billion of it in exchange. So these are the areas that we get those those reserve money increasing, and we use it for our trade export, particularly importation of goods and services to the country. But the key question is this: as we're increasing this buffer of our foreign reserve, it's also helping us to stabilize naira exchange, because the more dollar you have in your external reserve, the more you'll be able to negotiate your exchange rate of your current currency or your own local currency with other currency. But when you lack the dollar, your currency can just become something else. And that's what the government have been able to do through the currency BN, and they've been able to ensure that they are disciplined in terms of the kind of people who collect dollar from them as for business of importation in the Nigerian economy.
So meeting up with the target of Mr. President in 2027, what do you think?
It's possible.
Because of where we are right now.
Definitely, it's possible. And even the 60 billion that CBN is also targeting is possible. But it is based on how we are going to ensure that we have more discipline within the corridor of our importation business. Because Nigerian economy is over 55% dependent on importation of several goods and services at this point in time. So many things are important in the country. And the CBN governor have said it, that the only way to ensure that we achieve a better naira better naira appreciation is by local production. And when we produce enough, and you can also recall that the president also put out a law recently that any exploration or any good that has been exported out of Nigeria, particularly raw material, should have 30% input of production. That is either the primary stage or secondary stage. That is to help us that we don't just export raw material that is very cheap on international market, but we add value to them so that we can earn more dollar into them. And that's what they are doing currently. But we just hope that they can stick with some of this policy going forward, because sometimes government may have a change of mind when a particular policy is not favoring certain individual within the corridor of power and they want to change. And just like what we had between Dangote and Peng and the rest of them, or DAPMAN, the Depot Owner Association, who solely believe in the protection of PMS than local refineries. But the game has changed. And that's what Dangote changed the game. Federal government changed the game right from late President Buhari era, where it gave enough support to Dangote, and the current president also giving enough support to Dangote. Unlike what we had before that, we are just depending on importation. And that alone, if not that they did this for Dangote, and we are now reaping the effect in positive time, by now we won't have such external reserve. We will be struggling with 20 billion or 25 billion. But right now, it's over 43 billion.
All right. Now that you're talking about the CBN, let's get back to the CBN governor a little bit, talking about Cardoso, because Cardoso disclosed that 14 banks had already met the new recapitalization requirements. Now, as it is, that is with the sector remaining resilient and financial soundness indicators within the, of course, prudential benchmark. All right, this is within a prudential benchmark. As it is right now, what does it mean to you?
A very interesting package, I would say. What it means is that, the CBN came out with the rules and regulation about recapitalization of the banks in Nigeria. The last time we had recapitalization was in 2008, between 2007, 2008 to 2010. Then Salido also came in to do something like that for the central bank onto the banks, but much was not achieved within that. But this period, we have a bank capitalization that captured 500 billion for first-time banks. We have about 8 first-time banks. If you permit me to mention, if your station are allowed to mention, we are not doing free advert for them, but they are first-time banks, the likes of Zenith Bank, Access Bank, UBA, and GT Bank. They are the first-time banks. So they are targeting 500 billion because they have international recognition. They can open branch anywhere around the world. They will also have national banks that are targeting about 300 billion, or between 250 to 300 billion. Those ones are targeting just national coverage all over the country. There also are regional banks that are being asked to get at least between 50 to 100 billion. But what the central bank is saying right now, 14 of those banks have met their target. For instance, the Zoga group, they have about 5 banks they call the Zoga T Bank. What it means is an acronym that talks about Zenith Bank, Access Bank, GT Bank, First Bank, and UBA. They have met 1 trillion naira recapitalization. These banks I'm talking about. Then the rest are still coming up. Some have even surpassed their 50 billion, 100 billion, and the above. So it's a joy for someone like the Dr. Yemi Cardoso. Even at the point when he made the announcement of that recapitalization, some economists come and say, this is going to be very bad for the banks and the rest of them. But at the end of the day, we are all saying that it is something that will make
the banks are making a lot of money from Nigerians.
They are making money from Nigeria. They're also making money abroad. Most of them put their money in fixed incomes across the world.
Put our money in fixed income.
What do you want? Yes, our money in fixed income. So they are making money, I would say. It's a business for them. You get it. So that is how it is, and we just hope that this can be sustained. Just like the way we saw the Solodu era and Lamido era, Sanusi era, whereby we did the recapitalization, also make the banks very, very stable. And because any country, any economy across the world, one of the biggest hits of global economic challenge is the financial sector. The moment the financial sector is hit, every other sector in the economy will just melt down. And that's why, to stabilize our Nigerian financial sector, we must strengthen them. We must ensure that we put a non-mechanism discipline. And when you use the word prudence, what it means is that they should be able to spend the money according to the books.
Yeah. Not
you'll be spending money, a bank MD will go and buy plane for somebody somewhere, wisely, or put money in one political party. No, you don't, because like now, any moment from now, the CBN will be releasing the quarterly bank statement account or detailed account for all banks, so that if once they release it, banks will be able to pay dividends to their shareholders in the stock market. And that has been done, in a seamless way under Yemi Cardoso. I'm not praising Yemi Cardoso. The likes of Emefiele also did some wonderful work when he was a CBN governor, but we knew what really robbed him of those good things he was starting. I was one of those people that write a lot of articles about Emefiele then, all the FX 200 billion.
But now you later got discouraged when you begin.
When we all this skeleton is begin to be unfolding. You get it. One of the things they even did under President Bola Buhari was that naira, change in terms of to counterfeit naira was a good policy at that time. But I would say, if we like to say the little thing bad thing that he did spoil all the good work he was doing. Then go back to the era of Sanusi also. He did fantastically well. Go back to the era of what do you call it, Solodu. He did fantastic. Even the one before them, Dr. Obiora, they all did fantastic. Any CBN governor that comes to Nigerian Apex Bank as the governor, they always do very well. But little thing will just come and spoil the good thing they have been doing. But for now, we are seeing the good side of Cardoso. We just hope they can be able to sustain it, and the policies within the monetary policy sector will not also cause problem for him.
Our time is flying. You know, there was a time that people felt any little thing China, any little thing China, you know, and some persons were saying the debt Nigeria is owing China, would they ever pay? Let me ask this question now. Nigeria-China trade actually hit about $15.48 billion. Okay, that's from January to July. Now, can you share your thoughts to us?
It's also a very interesting part from that aspect, although the trade business is a lopsided one. You know, I would say that China is benefiting more, although we're also benefiting one way or the other, but it's not like what we really want, a balanced trade. You know, we export most of our raw material to China. We have some of their mining sector here, in the lithium sector, in the lithium battery, alternative energy. But we import most of our things that we consume here from China. So that's all that brings the unbalance in terms. Although we also export our crude oil to China, because China also buy. It's one of our customers when it comes to crude oil purchase of Nigeria, particularly the Bonilite and the brass crude oil from Nigeria. China buy a lot of it. But the unbalanced nature of it, even though we have a $15.48 billion trade for 6 months, it doesn't show an equality in the trade mechanism, but we need to balance that. But how are we going to balance that when we don't have the technology to turn some of those things around? So those are the issues. So, but balancing it will take a long time. But at this point in time, this is something we can manage. To manage it, make sure that our business is still flowing, our relationship is still sustained. And you also remember there's a yuan-naira exchange trade balance between Nigeria and China. So that's also working for us at this point. But we just need to manage it, but it's going to take some time because the technology advance of China is what is making that trade inequality balance to happen. I wish Nigeria can also is also building cars. Not that we assemble, we build it from the scratch to the finish, and we're also doing so many things like that. Although I could say kudos to Nasarawa State government, they are having 2 lithium factory right now in their state. One of them will be the biggest in West Africa. The other one is also the biggest within the corridor of Africa, but guess what they are doing? They are not just going to be exploring lithium material from Nasarawa State. They want to be turning them into finished goods. So if that is achieved within Nasarawa State, we also understand that Kaduna State is also having some more commercialized lithium quantity. Niger State is also doing this. And we can also turn the gold in Zamfara, another material resource around Nigeria.
Nigeria is blessed.
It's going to a finished
Nigeria
product.
Is blessed.
Definitely, we can have a balance of trade with all this country.
Nigeria is really blessed. I think we need to get to that point. I'm speaking to all Nigerians now. We actually need to get to that point where we will have expatriates working for us in this country, just the way Nigerians go rush outside Jagba to go and work there. You know, before now it was like that, but then these days, if they come, they just want to come and take advantage of our natural resources that we have. But then if these states are putting up these industries, I think it's going to help, go a long way helping. Our time is already up. I would have loved to look at the stock market, how it is right now.
Very interesting. The stock market is, although bearish in the last 2 days, but the moment the CBN made the announcement of the rate cut, we saw a very bullish out in the Nigerian stock market, and a lot of cash out, a lot of gains, a lot of profits taking place. The likes of Boa Cement, the likes of Dangote Sugar, the likes of Access Corporation, the likes of First Bank Holding, their parent company, all of them are cashing out on the recent bullish outing on the Nigerian stock market. So it's a good word, and you know, many of us are advocating that Nigerians just look for opportunity to invest your money in the Nigerian stock market, and that will really help the economy. Because stock market is also another place whereby you can put money to expand the business around the economy, not just looking for credit from the banks. When people put their money as shareholders in a particular company, that company used to expand their business, and that will come back as dividends at the end of the day. But I think that going forward, we should encourage Nigeria to be doing that.
Okay, you feel it will be good for Nigerians to be doing that.
It's very interesting. It's not like the MMM and the, one thing about stock market.
A lot of Nigerians don't even have the understanding of the stock market.
It's very simple. It's like, it depending on the company you are putting your money. You can have a share unit of 1 naira, a dividend of 2% or 3%, or they'll pay you 1 naira for whatever you have added in the company. So it is very simple. Although technical, I should say we don't have time. I wish we have time. We can discuss stock market here on the show. But the simplified way I could put it is that it's like a company like 2 years back, Dangote was calling for a share unit and he got 150 billion. Meanwhile, he needed only just 100 billion. Guess what? The 50 billion on top, he gave it back to the people that bought it. He said it's only 100 billion in need.
Can you imagine?
And guess what? When that 100 billion begin to manifest in Dangote group of company, by the time there's okay, each unit is about, maybe let's say it's 2 naira or 3 naira, and they're paying extra 1 naira on your 2 naira. Calculate it, what will come. And it's money that is there. It's like money working for you. It's not like the one that we are seeing MMM and the CBS and the rest of them that are saying, we'll give you 30%. No, it doesn't work that way with a stock. Stock is a gradual income stabilizer for anybody that puts money there.
Okay, so there's no loss.
Yeah, there could be loss if the financial sector and the economy is down, or when the company itself is not performing as expected. But there's guarantee that at least you can't lose all your money, because it's a guaranteed legal entity.
Well, our time is not on our side, but then I think we can hold it at this point. But finally, before I let you go, maybe subsequently, we'll talk about the tax system in Nigeria, the issue of tax. A lot of people have been raising eyebrows about it, but won't be able to talk about it today. But now, finally, before we go, what's your assessment, your general assessment of Nigeria's economy as it has to do with 2025?
I think the only challenge we have in our economy, because it does not really translate to meet up with the demands, the necessity basic needs of the bottom cadre of our citizenry. But I will assure you, the top people in the cadre of the pyramid of Nigeria economy that are all making, they are smiling. Forget about the political. Forget about the political jingoism, cream money that we are seeing here and there. Those who have invested in Nigerian economy, they are reaping it. The only thing is that our government can ensure that investment profit on the side of the government, because it is government that take care of the people, translate and transmit and change the life of the people. As I pointed out, it got stuck in the middle and it doesn't flow down. So the bottom table are the ones that are not getting the benefit. But guess what? The people at the top, they don't complain. Either you have a former this or a former that or whatever. As long as you're a businessman, you're doing business in Nigeria, they are making it. People who want filling stations, people who want businesses, even though the high cost of production is high, they won't tell you that they are not making profit, because you can see it in the luxury life that we are everywhere. Some of them.
So in other words, you're trying to tell us that business is key.
It's key.
Entrepreneurship,
and that's what the government is pushing. Although we have to do it in a way that government have to do its own business to make profit, to make money, and cater for the people, not just living into the hand of capitalists alone in Nigeria.
All right. That's where we peg it tonight on the desk. Not just leave it in the hands of the capitalists. Many thanks for joining us on the desk this evening. Adefolari Olamileko, a political economist, and of course, a development expert.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Time will not allow us to take more questions or go deeper into the discussion, but then this is the size of the discussion on the desk this evening. Many thanks for joining us. My name is Ramsey Enoch Agbo. Bye-bye for now.